Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Colleen and Jason, how are you guys doing today? How's Miami?
We're doing great. Miami's lovely.
Sunny,
hot. We'll take it.
I love it. So I want to just start because I read the book almost twice now. I love it. I love the philosophy. I love where you guys are coming from. I love the realness. I love the practicality of it. The Joy of Wellbeing. That's the book. Given that you guys you interview so many experts, you have so many experts on mindbodygreen. Your beautiful website platform. What was the inspiration for wanting to write this book to really get your message about wellness out there?
Well, there were definitely more than a few quote unquote whys on this one. For me, on a personal level, men in my family have a terrible track record with longevity. My father died of heart disease at 47. My two grandfathers died prematurely, one from heart disease at 49, the other from cancer at 44. I'm 48. And we have two little girls, age 6 and 4. And so I want to be around for a long time. And it's something I think a lot about. And I'm very blessed in that I have access to incredible doctors and many experts. And what's so exciting to me as I look at the evolution of mindbodygreen and the health and wellness conversation over the last 13 years is, one, I'm not unique. I think a lot of people have a family history they're not excited about, whether it's cardiovascular disease or cognitive decline or whatever it might be. Everyone's got something. But the science is pretty clear that through lifestyle modification and intervention, there's a lot you can do. And what's so great about the science too is much of what you can do is low cost or no cost and takes little time and effort. And the huge objection to health and wellness to our world is, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, and I don't know if it's going to work. And we're at a place where I think we can help you and we can get you 80% there. I think the last 20%, you're going to have to spend a little bit more time, money. This is where personalization comes in, but we think we can get you 80% there. And in the context of this conversation, it's evolved from this concept of longevity. So extending or lifespan, extending number of years, which I think we're all excited about. That was the 1.0, and the 2.0 is health span. So that's extending the number of years with an absence of disease, because no one wants to live to 100 and have 70 years of living great and then 30 years, suffering from disease and not being mobile and fit, et cetera. So that idea is health span is let's extend life for 99 years, 11 months, 30 days and feel fit, mobile and active and then rapidly decline overnight. And we like the 3.0 we call joy span. What's the point of doing all of this if you're not happy, if you're not enjoying your relationships, if you're not if you're at a place where no one likes to talk with you, I think you'd be pretty miserable. And so we really respond to this word joy. And then there's the word wellness, which Colleen has a point of view around.
Yeah, part of writing the book was because there is just such a cacophony of voices right now that we have such a complicated relationship with the word wellness. And when mindbodygreen was started, the word wellness wasn't really part of the zeitgeist. Sure, the word existed, but it wasn't how we described the collective of experts that really drove the growth and evolution of mindbodygreen. And when I look at it now, there's so many voices, there's so much noise. I look at the complicated morning routines that are on Instagram, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. At the other end of the spectrum is kind of the bro wellness, which, doesn't speak to me either.
Doesn't speak to me or my audience.
Or me. And I'm,
yeah, you're probably
I'm a bro.
The target. Yeah. So, but at the same time, I had entered wellness through my own personal healing journey. I found a lot of personal well-being in these practices. So there was a very intentional decision not to call this book The Joy of Wellness, because the way we see wellness now with the cacophony of voices, it's about optimization. There's a rigidity to the protocols. And how do we shift the conversation to be more about well-being, which comes from a place of abundance. It's a little more practical to one's life and lifestyle and comes at it with more grace. And it's all about the journey and less about the protocol.
And our goal was to deliver a book for the person, and this is us, and we're in this business, who has 15 to 30 minutes. That's all they have. They're busy, whether it's children, whether it's spouse, whether it's life's commitments. This was the goal of the book. And because it's overwhelming. And National Quitters Day at the gym was January 13th this year. We lasted 13 days. Why? Because we make commitments that don't fit into our existing lifestyle. It's about adding and not editing or integration. And we're big believers in integration, operating from a place of abundance, and really making well-being work for you and not you working for well-being.
I love that. Well, that's exactly what the book really does embody, is the practicality of it. And what I love about it is that you, as you're even sharing some of the things that the research really backs up, you guys are very honest about, like, well, it's not for us right now. As great as the research is, it's just not it's not going to work for us in this moment in our life, in the journey that we're in right this second, but we still want to offer it. And there was very few things like that inside of the book. But even then, you were just like, yeah, but we're not doing it personally.
It's got to bring you joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, when push comes to shove with your life's commitments, you're probably going to drop it. And where we sit today, there are so many practices, modalities, modifications that you can find enough that work for you and bring you joy. If you don't like it, probably don't have to do it.
Yeah. And of course, this is coming from people who are very far along on their wellness journey. That's not to say that the first time, you decide to eat healthy, the first time that plate is packed full of fiber, or the first time you go to the gym or go on a long walk, that you're like, this is joyful. There's a certain amount of motivation and discipline that's required. But once you get to that 80% place, then the decision should be about joy. And, the specific example we bring up in the book is cold plunges, all the rage on TikTok, all the rage on social media. So many people swear by them. There's
science is great.
Science is great. There's also mental resilience benefits of it. As a mom of two young kids and a working entrepreneur, I am not looking to invite more stress into my life. In fact, that is the opposite of what I'm trying to do right now. So that protocol doesn't work for me. But, we're all adults. We can all understand kind of what our unique bio-individual needs are and tailor our own well-being programs to it. And I think one of the hardest, kind of parts on this well-being journey is to understand that you are the CEO of your own health and well-being. There is such a cornucopia of amazing information and practitioners and healers and all sorts of different advice. But at the end of the day, you know your body best, you know what it needs, and you know what you'll actually do.
I love it. That's why I brought you guys on. My audience is like, oh, that's what we stand for over here. Well, I want to dive a little bit into it, and I want to speak into, I also want to dive a little later into what are your joy well-being practices, just so we can hear a little bit. And I bet a lot of people have been asking you that, but I'm just curious. But before that, I would love to dive a little bit into food. I love the chapter. I love the many facets of that particular part of the book where you kind of looked at, obviously a lot of philosophies out there, a lot of schools of thought. But I would love for you to share a little bit about where you landed, especially with all the people you've interviewed and all the stuff that's happening with metabolic health, and even the stats around metabolic dysfunction, where we're kind of landing. What were some of the biggest tenets that you guys really walked away from that you chose to put into the book?
Well, you're absolutely right. We believe in bio-individuality and this idea that you need to find the right diet for you. And we also, with that said, we encourage everyone to do some baseline blood work to get an understanding of how they respond to certain foods. There are some people who, look at a piece of meat and their lipid panel goes through the roof, and there are other people who eat meat all day and they're totally fine. And one of the examples we use to prove this point are our two friends, Mark Sisson and Rich Roll. Mark is 69, turning 70. He's almost a carnivore and is in fantastic shape.
Oh yeah, I just saw it was a Facebook Insta post or whatever on a bike. I was like, dang, Mark.
Yeah, it's working for him. And then Rich Roll is 56 and 100% plant-based, and it works for him. And what do these people have in common? Not much, other than they work out a ton, probably too much. and they don't eat a lot of processed food. And I think that's where everyone can kind of agree. And the consequences are dire. There was a study out of France that showed an increase of 10% of ultra processed
foods. Yeah.
Yeah, increased mortality risk by 14%. And 2/3 of all calories consumed here by children are ultra processed food. So
I was going to say 66, 67%.
Yeah. Yeah. And so eat real food. That's a big one for us. We're fiber deficient. Fiber is an area where we should focus on. But I think that's really hard to disagree with. And everyone should get a baseline understanding of their lab work and what they respond to, and try to eat real food.
I love it. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I remember reading one of Michael Pollan's book back in 2009, like eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants. And then I know Robert Lustig is, protect the gut, or feed the gut and protect the liver. Those are really my tenets. But yeah, I mean, even with our children, I think about, I scrutinize labels for my son, and I'm like, I really shouldn't even be looking at labels at all. But he's a toddler.
And look, processed food happens. It happens in our house. Mm-hmm. It happens when we travel. It happens with our kids. It's a reality of life. I just think it's something you want to be mindful of.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and in the least amount of it as possible, especially when it comes to, gosh, almost all of our food's processed. Eggs. Yeah. Almond milk. When you think about it, like even the things that I would consider like mainstays in my house, well, it's processed. And so, yeah, it's just, how unprocessed can we become is really the name of the game. And that's a big thing that I talk about on my show.
And I think it's about, ensuring that eating is a joyful experience. You don't want to feed foods that your body doesn't agree with. And, some of us have a range of intolerances or foods that just don't work for us. But once you move beyond that, let's bring the joy back to eating. Do it with friends and rituals, and have it be a community. It should be one of the things that truly brings us joy in life.
Yeah. I want to move to, let's talk a little bit about friends and community. That was another big part of the book, because I know that lots of research is showing that we are more alone than ever before, and that's having detrimental effects on our overall well-being, especially our mental well-being, today more than ever. And I know that you guys talked a lot about in the book. Probably some of the scary stats that I read in the book were those. So can you spend a little bit of time on not only some of the research that you found, and what are ways that we can really improve this, but then how are you guys doing it also in your life? Is it just within your family, or are you intentionally making time with friends and family as well?
Sure. I'm glad you brought this up. I think the loneliness epidemic and mental health epidemic are very real, and they're scary, and they're top of mind for us. And I'll share some of the statistics. There are so many. I'll share a couple because they're scary, and I don't want to be a downer here. 1 in 7 men don't have a single friend. 1 in 10 women don't have a single friend. 1/4 of the population under the age of 30 is lonely. And so, okay, we've got a loneliness problem. Well, what are the implications with regards to our health and longevity? Well, there was a study out of Utah, out of BYU, that suggested that smoking 15 cigarettes a day is equivalent to being lonely. And okay, that's pretty bad. Well,
that's awful. That's awful.
Being lonely is twice as worse as having 6 drinks a day. That's 42 drinks a week. 3 times as worse as being immobile. 4 times as worse as being obese. So we have a problem here. We need to reach out. We need to connect with people. We need to be empathetic, and we need to get back in touch. As humans, we really need meaningful IRL connection.
That was the thing you said, was in real life. And I was thinking, a lot of my friends moved after the pandemic or during the pandemic to Austin. And we're staying here in North County, San Diego. And so it was really interesting when this happened, because these are my best friends, my pack. These were the friends that we were with each other during the pandemic, pretty much almost every day. And so when I was reading this chapter, and I've been knowing this, I was really praying that my girlfriends and I, we leave voice memos every single day with each other. And it's the most fun experience to get a voice memo back, because I never know when it's going to happen. And I know that it's not as powerful as this FaceTime or Zoom or in real time, but I know that for some of us, like, that's the best we can do right now.
Yeah, I think, you probably hit the nail on the head of, doing what's the best you can do right now. And, this is a place where we wish there was more dialogue. We look at the well-being world and there's so much conversation around nutrition. There's so much conversation around exercise. And then there's so many influencers like further spreading, nutrition and movement kind of gospels, but we want to see that same sort of impact in the connection space because it can have such a huge impact on your own health and well-being. And it's something that, we both have said we've needed to work on. Frankly, it's a muscle that, has to go to the connection gym and get strengthened, just like everything else that we do within life. And there's a wonderful Wall Street Journal article about the intentionality that so many women are putting towards these type of, if you can do it IRL KPIs of getting together, because sometimes we do have to kind of put ourselves a little bit outside of what's natural and feels comfortable in order to get that pattern restarted in life. After COVID, so many of us kind of had those natural moments that were already woven into our lives, and now we need to restart it. And putting KPIs and tracking it like a business metric, so that it actually happens in your life and that we don't leave it up to chance or coincidence to get together IRL, because it has such a different impact on your brain and your oxytocin.
Enough said.
Text message.
Yeah, and it's something men are terrible at. Men are definitely far worse than women. They tend to lose touch and take on the friends of their spouses if they're married. And it's something I've had to work on. I had so many friends that coming out of college in New York, and we all hung out together, and then 30s started to lose touch, and marriage, and then kids in their 40s. And so this is an area where, I'm probably the worst one in my friend group at keeping in touch. And Esther Perel had some great advice on this, which I've used and have had success. It's a simple text message or DM saying, hey, so-and-so, it's been too long, been thinking about you for X, Y, or Z. Would love to catch up. Let me know what works. And it's that simple. There's no awkward silence like it used to be a long time ago when you had to pick up a phone. And you'd probably be surprised by the response, and you can gauge whether or not someone wants to reconnect. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. That's something I've had to work on.
Mm. I love that. Yeah. And I love that suggestion in the book of just like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just like, hey, I've been thinking about you. I miss you. What have you been up to? Love to follow up, love to catch up. And I think the other thing that you guys said is, like you said, KPIs, which again, I think about our business, like how much are we in our business because we love what we do. Like I'm meeting those KPIs. I'm meeting those deliverables, for my team. And we are not scheduling out real-time interaction like we're scheduling whatever we're doing in work. And so we treat it like that. Like I believe you guys said, like, get it on the calendar, like get it on the calendar, just like you're getting everything else on the calendar. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about, even with your girls, the time you're spending with them. And because that's even, I know that that's not friendship connection, but that's even connection, like how the kind of quality time that you're spending with your family.
We spend a lot of time together. That's for sure.
Oh, I know that.
And work together.
My husband and I have worked together too, so I get it.
I think with kids, what we try, and again, this is a work in progress, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. We try to be present physically, and then also the challenge sometimes is like be present mentally. Because often, you're with them in the physical sense, but like, are you really there? Are you thinking about work? Are you checking email? Are you looking at social media?
Is your phone anywhere around you?
Yeah, are you really there? And look, that's an area I need to get better at. I'm trying to be more mindful of it. I'm also trying to, catch myself when I'm doing that and remind myself, like, they're at this young age where they want to hang out with us. That's probably not going to be the case in 10 years.
Yeah. And I think so much changes, throughout every stage, every year of life. Our girls are literally like new people with different tastes and preferences. So what worked 6 months ago, what worked a year ago, it's like they feel like an entirely different person. But the work that's really stood out to both of us is a work of Dr. Lisa Miller, who is a Coconut Grove, Miami resident and also teaches at Columbia. And she found that when mother and child were both high in spirituality, the child was 80% more protected against depression compared with mothers and children who were not concordant for spirituality. So she's really brought to light this conversation of being high in spirituality, and the results can apply to caretakers, to grandparents, to, fathers. And I found it's made a huge impact on kind of my role as a parent. And she has such a generous definition of spirituality, where it can be organized religion, if that's something you respond to. It can be spending time in nature. It can be volunteering. It's really just this belief in something bigger than ourselves. And we talked a little bit about how our whys have evolved over the years. And, my why right now is this mental health epidemic, and trying to raise girls who are resilient to the inevitable up and downs, and who have the skills to cope in a world that's going to have highs and lows. And this idea of teaching our girls that everything's going to be okay, even if we don't know how, such an important part of, what I want to impart in them. Not that I'm doing this flawlessly every day, but she's had such a profound impact on kind of how we think about our girls.
That's really beautiful. And I love that. I love that mindset around incorporating that part of wellness and really setting them up for success. Especially for girls. I had a little boy. I swore I was going to be a girl mom, because I was like, I'm up for the challenge.
I mean, it's hard to be a human right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a boy. Yeah. It's hard to be a girl, but kind of no matter wherever you're at on whatever parenting stage, what is true is that they're always watching, right? So we try to bring them to the gym so they can see us, establishing healthy habits, watching us cook so that they see those life skills happening. They are little sponges who are absorbing it all in. If they see the healthy habits, and their parents they're more likely to carry it through to their own lives.
And I don't know, I'm going to butcher this, and I don't remember what the research is, but I believe like the health span of our children particularly are on what the mamas are doing, and how their mamas are moving. And I was, I just briefly read an article, and I was like, okay, good. I mean, I've been working out ever since I was pregnant and all the things. And so, but it's really interesting, like how a lot of how the moms operate in the world, and with the type of wellness practices that we are doing, our children are really, their propensity for longevity is really, not that there's any more pressure on us.
I know.
All the things.
The good and the bad.
Go figure. So I know but I think both parents too, but my son is really, really always like, what's mama doing? What's she doing? What's she eating? It's like mama coffee, he knows when I'm making coffee.
I love it.
So I want to move into, given all of the interviews you've done, all the research you've looked at, and all the contributors you've had, and kind of where you have both landed on your own wellness journey, and kind of that intersection between doing things that are going to drive your health span and longevity, and kind of your whys for that. And I have a feeling you guys both have really strong whys for why you want to feel and live younger for as long as possible. But then also, what does that look like in terms of kind of, what are the intersection of joy and really implementing the habits that are going to have you live as long as possible, for not only for your girls, but for your grandchildren, and all the reasons that is your why?
Yeah. So my why in health and wellness, started from one of those near catastrophic breakdown moments. And, one of my many hopes in writing the book is that, we can ask ourselves, when is it time to make a change to our lives, and not have to wait until the universe has one of those breakdown moments to kind of self-evaluate everything, and then, lead to those breakthrough moments. But I had one of those breakdown to breakthrough moments about 10 years ago, when I had a pulmonary embolism. And I was, kind of fit and healthy on the outside, doing what you do when you're in your early 30s in New York, had a corporate job, worked hard. And I think my idea of joy at that moment in time was, getting drinks and, doing the things you do in New York. And what I wish for so many women out there is that they can listen to the whispers in their body before you have that catastrophic event, because I do think the body and the nervous system gives us clues when we're out of calibration. And, sometimes it's easy to kind of gaslight those symptoms. And I had left Tara Stiles's Sunday morning 11 a.m. yoga class, which was my ritual at the time. And I was very out of breath. And so I had Jason join me in the city, and we walked around for a bit, and I was like, I need to go home. So we took the train home, and I collapsed on the stairs getting out of the station. eventually got out of the station, but then gaslit those symptoms and, didn't want to go to the NYU ER on a Saturday. So I was like, I'm fine. I was lethargic and napping the rest of the weekend. And then come Monday morning, Jason was like, the only way you can go to work is if you go to your doctor on the way. So within minutes of arriving at my doctor's office, it was very clear that I was having a pulmonary embolism. He gave me a sign that said I'm having a pulmonary embolism. It wasn't clear if he was worried about me getting to the ER or not being able to articulate what was happening once I got there. But that for me started this very long healing journey. I learned that I had catastrophic clots in my lungs, and it is a process to work out the clots. And it's one of those true invisible illnesses where you look okay on the outside, but I was very much struggling to breathe on the inside. And I would remember being on the subway train and almost, kind of eyeing senior citizens for the chairs because it was so important for me to be able to sit and get and be able to breathe in the hot and humid New York summer. And that was the start of this long journey of realizing, okay, my life is clearly out of calibration. Let me embark on this Marco Polo game of trying to get it back into equilibrium and trying everything Western, everything holistic, and really just had this wonderful openness to trying new things. And I was at a life stage where I didn't have kids, had kind of decided to deprioritize all of work after this event happened. And so had this luxury of time to have what was a very inefficient journey to figuring out what my body needed, not just to survive, but to truly thrive. And when I look at the joy of well-being, it is the roadmap I wish I had there to go on a much more efficient journey to figure out what my body needed. And after all of, this kind of work that is my joy and passion in life as well, it's so much of the fundamentals. Our mutual friend, JJ Virgin, has this great line that you got to bake the cake before you can focus on the frosting. And so much of the needle movers in our world are the fundamentals that we can all agree on, breath, sleep. We talked a little bit about nutrition earlier, connection, and this idea of something bigger. So my why now is really focused on kind of this awareness that by any metric, we have more wellness in the world than we've ever had. $450 billion industry growing at 5% a year, but all the metrics are really bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's crazy to me. Like, for as much as we have of all this information and content and research, it's not looking good.
It's
for
not
so
looking
many
good.
of us. Like my sister, who's younger than me, she's 40. She had a stroke this year.
Eesh, that's scary.
And so, it's just, and then I, just thinking about like, I have Hashimoto's, I have an autoimmune condition. And this was the year I was going to get metabolically fit. And for my son, for my family, my numbers were going to look, and the numbers look great, but Gabrielle Lyons, one of my best friends in the whole world. And she's just like, girl, it's time to start increasing those weights. You know what I'm saying? And so, around the same time, my thyroid medication got adjusted and dropped, because we thought maybe I didn't need as much. I hired her personal trainer, and I have been what I call in a ditch, a chronic fatigue ditch since April. And I thought it was I thought I overexercised myself into a ditch. And no, we realized it was probably a combination of that. And we lowered my thyroid medication too much. And I just fell into this deep chronic fatigue state that I'm trying to crawl out of. And I'm like, I was doing all the things. I was checking all the boxes. I was going to bed right after my son went to bed. All that, like, I was thinking about your sleep chapter. And I was like, check. Like, I start my sleep routine when I wake up in the morning. I'm outside within an hour, it's so hard to do all of it. And I was like, how is it that I feel like crap right now? And 6 months into the year, it's mind blowing to me, like, with all the research and all the things, and yet we can just find ourselves not feeling very well resourced today, more than ever. And so even the people that are trying so hard, I'd like to say that I'm one of those try hard people. That's why I feel like your book was such a breath of fresh air. It came to me at such a really important time where I was really struggling. And despite all the things I knew to be true, and I just couldn't put my thumb on it,
Right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, look, life is full of seasons, and sometimes we go through seasons that are a little bit more difficult. There are no good answers. You just kind of gotta like stay the course and push through. It's easy for me to say that, but having gone through some of those moments, you just gotta kind of stay the course, believe things will get better, and hope for the best, and they usually do.
Yeah. Yeah. They usually do. And I know I was just thinking about you, Jason, when I was, my sister going through her journey, and so many family members, a lot of the men in my life have had quadruple or triple bypasses in their early 50s. And, and women relatively being protected up into a certain point, and then we just kind of fall off a cliff ourselves. And so it was really interesting, just having that around in my sphere, and thinking about how do we maintain longevity, and how do we do it in regards to our own personal, non-negotiables. And that's why I think you guys have done such a great job, because again, if you hate it, well, you're not going to do it that long,
Right.
or if you hate it, it's just going to really suck. And so that was another piece of it that I thought you guys were so real about. They're like, yeah, these are also great things you can do, but if you hate it, it's going to be really hard to sustain it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, what were some things that you guys have found? And I was thinking you guys have been in major journeys in the last 13 years, including the journey to have these beautiful girls, and then the journey of being parents to young children, and how that all looks, and the reality of that, because that's the reality. I mean, I know that so many people listening to us today are so well intended, and they're doing the best they can, and yet they're not feeling super hot. And I'm like, thank God I finally figured out, maybe it's my medication, how did I gave myself such a hard time, because and then I was like, oh my gosh, how do I not know this? Like, I know this, these are the things I know and so it's just really interesting just to hear your own personal journey in it, knowing the things that, looking at your own health history and your family's history, and the journey that you have been on, kind of what has been decided for you. I get that it is bio-individual, but that I feel like you guys have really given yourselves a lot of grace, and really touched into what feels good for you.
Yeah, I think that we think that's important, because in our world, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame, there are expectations, and it is a journey. And sometimes we need to do this too, remind ourselves, you need to be kind, you need to be empathetic, and there are seasons. And again, I think also on this note, Colleen talked about the frosting and the cake. We tend to get caught up on the frosting. And we do this. I'm wearing an Aura, a Whoop, and we sleep on an 8-sleep mattress. So I like the frosting.
I have a CGM on most of the time,
Yeah, but you have to focus on the fundamentals through it all. And that's just something I lose sight of, we lose sight of, and I think an important reminder for everyone.
Yeah. And it is the fundamentals that's the under kind of pinning of everything we do. And, it isn't this, journey to get to well-being and then it's great and life kind of stops. It's a journey filled with, the inevitable ups and downs, whether you're in this space or not in this space. It's not a goal of getting to peak optimization and it's done. And I think giving ourselves and showing ourselves grace throughout this journey is one of the most important things to do, because of that something bigger.
One of the last questions I want to ask you guys is, what does joy look like to you? How are you cultivating it with each other, within your family? Is there intentionality around creating and cultivating joy, not just within wellness, but just in general? It's been a mini obsession of mine this year to just feel that spontaneous joyfulness in a lot of the things that I'm doing in life. And I feel like connections, it's very intentional. Like, you got to practice it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think you have to be thoughtful about it, or else you won't make time for those moments of joy. Moving to Miami has enabled us to be outdoors more, which has brought us a tremendous amount of joy. While it was a wonderful move for our 2 children, I think it's been a good move for us as 2 humans who enjoy moving their bodies and being outside. So it's the simple joys of walking, when you're not buttoned up in really, really thick coat. I love pickleball. We need to play more of it here. Spending time on the beach and outside and grounding our feet. And, speaking of the intention of it, we love getting multi-generational gatherings together. Jason's mom luckily spends a lot of time with us. And when we, invite people over, it's typically with their kids too. And we love having, lots of different people over to just break bread and have a good meal.
And I'll double the walking. I love walking. If I don't get my 10,000 steps, I'm a grumpy dinosaur.
Me too. Me too. And walking outside.
Yes.
Walking in nature, there is something so just energizing, and it feels so alive, and it feels like an amazing mental clearing. I love that you guys are having so many people over as well. And I was curious about that. In real time, is it barbecues? Is it, other families?
It's whatever we have to celebrate. We had a party for our daughter's birthday. Then we had a couple parties for our book launch. And we had another party for our daughter's birthday. So if there's a good excuse to celebrate something, we will celebrate it.
Culturally, I think Miami loves to celebrate. So we have embraced that and, celebrate with more joy than we did in other chapters of life.
I love that so much. We just celebrated a half birthday. My son just turned 2.5. So yeah, any reason to get people together. We had a big bubble party, and yeah, I agree. I'm always looking for a reason to have people over. Well, you guys, it was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your non-negotiables, your joy, this beautiful book with the world. I'm so excited to share. I've already been sharing it on Insta, and I've been telling all my friends about it as well. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know what it's like to birth a book baby. It's a process.
Well, thank you so
for all
much.
that you do.
Thank you.